Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Center for a New American Security, where we're here with Harry Krejsa and Hannah Suh, who are the co-authors of Phishing in Troubled Waters, Confronting Cyber Espionage Across the Pacific and the Strait of Taiwan. And Harry, I want to start with you. Why is this so important? Why is this such a big challenge?
Well, the United States and Taiwan together take up a lot of China's strategic attention. The United States is China's chief geopolitical competitor, and Taiwan is their chief strategic liability. And together, they also take up a lot of the focus of China's military planning and capabilities development. Now, we know a lot about this in the form of kinetic weapons development, A2AD missiles, things that could be turned against both Taiwan and forward deployed American troops. But we also now know that they both take up a lot of effort in non-kinetic capabilities development, most recently in the form of hacking and cyber exploits. Now, because there's this shared threat, Taiwan and the United States also have shared vulnerabilities. They're both open democratic societies, which for all their benefits leave them susceptible to disinformation and hybrid warfare campaigns. And they also have economies that are qualitatively very similar. Advanced IP or intellectual property-based economies with tightly connected supply chains, which mean that you can practice and hone similarly designed cyber exploits in Taiwan before turning them against the United States, which digital forensic research has found is increasingly the case. Taiwan, for mainland China-based hackers, is a more friendly environment to engage in prototyping and testing before eventually turning those exploits and hacks against the larger and juicier targets in the United States.
Hannah, talk to us a little bit about the economic impact of this, because there is both a security impact but also a financial impact to companies.
Yeah, so globally, cybercrime costs the global economy about $160 billion, of which $30 billion is focused just on the US. So that's a large impact on the economy here. Currently, cybercrime accounts for about 2% of national GDP, so that's on par with narcotics and global piracy. So we're a little bit under the threshold of which it warrants a lot of attention. So once it reaches above that 2% threshold is when countries start to really pay attention. But also one of the really interesting effects and implications is the commercial side. This is the only kind of domain conflict where the commercial side has an equal part to play as the government does. But it doesn't seem to affect commercial companies as much as it does the government.
It's seen a little bit, though, as wastage and cost of doing business is how people have been looking at this. The Obama administration's position on this was treat it as a crime, even if it's coming from state actors. So, for example, identify the people in the PLA who are involved in these attacks and, bring legal proceedings against them. How effective was that sort of naming, shaming, and targeting ultimately in changing China's course?
Well, I think that the verdict is at best mixed. There are some reports that say we've seen less cyber espionage in the commercial sector over the last few years. Others say that it's too early to tell whether this has been terribly effective. And for that reason, a lot of U.S. policy seems to be turning in recent months towards defensive capabilities and counterforce. And I think that one of the recommendations we make in our report is that the United States should look to Taiwan as a potential partner in developing shared solutions. Because they have such similar threat and vulnerability profiles, Taiwan would be a natural partner to the extent that cross-strait politics might allow. However, there are lots of opportunities to create those kinds of collaborative solutions that are quiet enough so as not to rock that cross-strait boat. The Department of Homeland Security is the plays a leading role in defensive cyber capabilities and could, with relative ease, start developing mid-level civil servant exchanges with their counterparts in Taiwan, the Department of Cybersecurity Defense there. And that way we could kind of share what we know because we're going to be facing many of these same cyber exploits at different stages.
What are some other techniques that this alliance can use from your standpoint?
I think what Harry mentioned is government interaction, but also I think private sector has a huge role to play. We've seen white hackers and bug bounties as well as hackathons. I think having those type of events is really helpful. But I think from a broader perspective, having that dialogue between private industry and the government. So establishing a working group or a commission, President Obama established a commission on enhancing national cybersecurity, and I think that's a step in the right direction of having an ongoing dialogue between the people who have an interest, as well as and who can provide the tools, which is private industry, as well as government, which then can provide that strategic level intelligence and insights.
And Harry, what are some recommendations for the new administration as they go about creating their plans and the posture they want to take? And I want to get both your take on it from a private industry standpoint, but also from a nation-state standpoint.
Well, as we know from the transition period, this administration seems unusually willing to look at the US-Taiwan relationship in a new light. And while things might have been bumpy in how exactly we're going to look to the one China policy here in the United States, I think that the administration should look to a growing willingness among some of our partners to dip their toes in closer relations with Taiwan. Japan in particular seems to be exploring quiet but substantive new ways to develop those relationships with the Taiwanese. And the administration, I think, would be well served to help cultivate that and maybe even explore multilateral opportunities for cybersecurity collaboration with Japan and Taiwan. In no small part because Japan is probably number 3 on the list of chief targets of Chinese cyber espionage.
Hannah?
For the Trump administration, I think they would do well to take the lessons learned from the Obama administration. Secretary Carter did a great job in starting DIUX. We've set up Cyber Command. DoD is on track to set up, I think, over 130 cyber forces or missions by 2018. So I think Secretary Mattis would do well to continue that. And looking at DIUX, I know there's been a lot of debate as to how effective it's been, but taking some of the lessons learned and the relationships that have been built with Silicon Valley and continuing them throughout this administration would be immensely helpful for this administration.
Hannah, Harry, thanks very much and great report.
Thank you.
Thank you.